Is there any reason to think that resolution is near here?
No, there's not. I think the Cowboys did not anticipate having to do this. They had other extensions that they were working on this offseason. We saw them extend Trevon Diggs. They're working on CeeDee Lamb. I don't think this is in their plans. And I think if you look at it from the Cowboys' standpoint, it doesn't need to be, right? They paid him, and he was the highest paid guard in the league. Now he's heading into a season where he's going to turn 33 years old. He's got 2 years left on his contract. So if you extend him now, he turns 35 in the first year of the extension. Not a lot of history of guys playing at a super high level at interior offensive line in the age 35 season and beyond. So I don't feel like the Cowboys are eager to do anything here. I think they feel like he'll show up. As of today, the fines are up to, I think, $850,000, right? If he misses a preseason game, they can fine him the equivalent of one game check. So it starts to get serious. How much are you willing to lose in order to make your point if you're Zack Martin? And I think the Cowboys are waiting to find that out.
Well, that's what they're counting on. But it seems to me, Harry, that Zack Martin's leverage is if the season begins and he's still not there, and these fines will be well into the millions by that time, so he's playing a dangerous game. But if that happens, and all of a sudden the Cowboys are getting decimated on their offensive line, then maybe that's the way that they wind up caving.
Which is a strong possibility. And you, for 1 minute, don't think Zack Martin doesn't understand that. When you look at their first 6 or 7 opponents, they play the Giants, who have a good defensive line. They play the Jets, who have a good defensive line. They play the Patriots, who can rush the passer. We seen the Patriots backups last night versus the Houston Texans, and they basically embarrassed that offensive line. The 49ers, who had the #1 defense a season ago. The Rams, who have Aaron Donald. And also the Philadelphia Eagles, a team in your own division, that sacked the hell out of the quarterback a season ago as well. So if I'm Zack Martin, I'm looking at that, or if I'm defensive coordinators on those teams and I know Zack Martin isn't there, I'm going to get my best pass rushers on whoever the backup is now filling in for Zack Martin, and we're going to work. We're going to embarrass him.
So, Cronin, now what?
Well, I guess you let him, if you're Zack Martin, you play this out because he doesn't talk a lot, so I think he's very serious about this holdout. He wouldn't just be doing this to come back eventually and let bygones be bygones. You let Dexter Lawrence handle Josh Ball, who's one of their backups right now. You see how that thing plays out, and you stand pat because the longer this thing goes on, the worse it looks for this offensive line in Dallas in a year where you're trying to get a new voice in Dak Prescott's ear and having him cut down on the 15 interceptions he threw in the regular season. Having interior pass protection is the key to making sure he's not put into rush decisions or ill-timed, ill-fated decisions. Play this thing out. They did it with Emmitt Smith a long time ago.
Yeah.
Different situation, but they went 2 games, realized, wow, we're not a better team without him. And then magically the money became available.
Well, Jerry has a history of caving. I mean, this was Emmitt. It was they'd won the Super Bowl the year before, and then he holds out the first 2 games of the season. They look bad. Jerry realizes he needs them. He signs Emmitt to a deal. He comes back, and they win the Super Bowl that second consecutive year. We also saw Jerry in the modern era with the salary cap and everything else in place magically find a deal for Ezekiel Elliott when he was down in Cabo a couple of years ago. So Jerry has a history of caving, and maybe that's what Zack Martin is counting on.
Once upon a time, they paid Hall of Fame guard Larry Allen late in his career when he wanted a new contract. So that has happened, but again, they have other stuff to do. CeeDee Lamb's going to want a lot of money. I mean, you're talking about that contract that could get to $30 million a year. Micah Parsons next year, you're talking about a contract that could get to $35 million a year.
All of the conversation around Dak Prescott was around the interceptions that he threw last year. So he threw 15. Will he throw more or less than 10 this year?
I'm going to go more, but that's okay, though, Greeny. It just can't be 15 interceptions in 12 games. If you're out there taking chances and you're playing a 17-game season, think about it. Some of our greatest quarterbacks that has ever played this game has had 11, 12, 13 interceptions. But I also think context matters here. An interception on a Hail Mary, an interception tip ball off a receiver's hand, that's not Dak Prescott's fault. Those things are going to happen within a football season.
Let me ask you the question then differently, because I feel like this is what you're saying. Are we too focused? Are you worried they're too focused on that? Because there's been so much attention paid to it. Are you worried that they are, you used the term handcuffs on Daniel Jones. Are you concerned that that offense is going to be too conservative in an effort to not allow that to happen again this year?
I believe so, and I think if the Cowboys want a chance to reach an NFC Championship game and win a Super Bowl, Dak Prescott can't be thinking about making mistakes. He has to go out there and take his chances and hope for the best. I just think that's how he has to approach things. You can't be scared to thread the needle or make a big play when it presents itself. You got to have the mindset that you're going to go for the gusto.
Orlovsky was in here, sitting where Courtney is right now, a couple of weeks ago, saying exactly that. You can't have your quarterback playing cautious.
Nope.
You got to play smart, but you can't play cautious. And the other side of it, Dan, I think while you were away, I had RC in here one day, and he was saying, all this talk about the Cowboys being like, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Who is it that's doing that? Who on their field is doing that? He actually used this expression. Tony Pollard running the ball up the middle is like bringing a Ferrari to a demolition derby. Like, it doesn't make any sense. They don't have the horses to run that offense.
And also, there's nothing in Mike McCarthy's history that tells us that they want to do that.
That's right.
It just isn't. We have 22 years of data on him as a head coach and or offensive coordinator, and never has been in the top half of the league in rush attempts, right? So they're not going to be run first. I think he wants to be able to run the ball late in games when they have a lead and put the thing away. I think that's pretty much it. Dak Prescott, I don't think is going to be like, way too careful. I think Dak Prescott believes last year's interceptions, that wasn't him, and that if he plays the way he knows how to play, that won't happen again. It really has never been an interception guy before.
And to your point, Graz, Mike McCarthy's last 4 years in Green Bay, he didn't have a running back with over 800 yards rushing.
Right.
He threw the thing around.
And their quarterback was Aaron Rodgers, and so I get it. So it's a little bit different. But Courtney,
happened to that guy?
Here's the thing you and I both know, and that is that as soon as it happens, and whether it's week 1 or week 3 or whatever, that they lose a game and he throws a couple of interceptions in it, that is going to be the talk of the entire league. We're going to lead with it every single morning here. That's going to be a very big deal, and that will be a fascinating test. It happens. It'll be a fascinating test.
A test to see how they get out of it, because last year I don't think there were solutions from Kellen Moore of getting Dak Prescott out of these ruts that he was in. That's why Mike McCarthy saw the path towards getting him on track is to take over the play calling, to simplify what they're asking him to do offensively. Now, the additions that they made this offseason, the tight end that they drafted, bringing in Brandon Cooks, you finally have some speed on the outside that's not just going to help the offense as a whole, it's going to help CeeDee Lamb and what he's doing on the other side of the field. Those are good things, but I just take a look at everything in totality. Not having Ezekiel Elliott there, like you're just gonna rely on Tony Pollard coming off injury and expect that that's going to be where you pick up speed with the run game. Not so sure that's going to work out, and you lose your security blanket in Dalton Schultz. So let's hope that the additions that they made can help Dak Prescott and the offense stay on track and play ahead of schedule instead of behind it, the way that they've had to do, and overcompensating for all the interceptions last year.
Yeah, and a tight end can be a security blanket, and so can a great offensive line. And we've got the big questions there. This is his 3rd year. I mean, this is an important season. How would you describe the significance of this season for Fields?
It's huge because most times in year 3, because of the 5th-year option that comes up for first-round quarterbacks, you've got to figure out, do you have most of the questions answered and you're comfortable moving forward with this guy, picking up the option, and then working towards the big contract? He's got to show he can get there first. I remember the first day of training camp, he talked about wanting to be the franchise's first ever, yes, you heard that correctly, first ever 4,000-yard passer. If he wants to get there, he's doubling his production from last year, and of course the weapons around him will allow him to do that. But the weapon they brought in, DJ Moore, and giving up that first-round pick to Carolina, they got an extra first-round pick in 2024. So if this season does not go well, that means more losses like last year, and it probably means Fields isn't doing well. They're going to be in a position to draft a quarterback next year because they've got that extra ammo in the first round.
And it is a quarterback-rich draft we expect next season.
Yeah, it's very, very heavy. You look right now in college football in the Pac-12 alone, it's like 4 or 5 deep, and that's not even talk about Drake May at North Carolina or Quinn Ewers at
When you say the Pac-12 is 4 or 5 deep, do you mean the conference? I mean, there's only 4 teams left in. Oh, you mean there's that many good quarterbacks in it? I got you. No, but okay, I make a joke there because why not? I sidetracked you. The point is that if the Bears don't see what they want in Justin Fields this season, it could be over for him in Chicago.
It could be, and I hate to say that because I think Justin Fields and the upside that he has could be tremendous, and he could make major strides this season. But if we don't see that, that's the luxury that organization has in the front office because they did not draft him like you mentioned, Greeny, and that 5th-year option is looming too.
What's the sense you're getting, Danny?
Well, the sense I'm getting, and Courtney, correct me if I'm wrong, is that they have some belief in the positive outcome here.
Yeah.
And I think the proof of that is that they traded the #1 pick. They could have had Bryce Young.
Right.
They could have moved on from Justin Fields this offseason. They had the 1 pick. They traded it in order to try and get him some help. So there's at least some faith from the coaching staff and the front office that didn't draft him. They've seen enough to believe that it can be good. And the range of outcomes is spectacular. Like, if he's really good, then that changes everything for the franchise. The offensive coordinator, Luke Getsy, becomes a head coach candidate. We've seen this happen, right? Like, all those things. And if it goes poorly, then, as Courtney pointed out, they're in position to maybe get a quarterback next year with the extra first-round pick. But I think the Bears believe that good things can happen for Justin
Look,
Fields.
I'll say it again. The template for quarterback development in the NFL was set in Buffalo a few years ago with Josh Allen, and then continued in Philadelphia with Jalen Hurts. You get a guy who's got a skill set, you bring him along at the right pace, and then when he's ready to explode, you go out and you get him that weapon that he needed. It was Stephon Diggs, it was A.J. Brown, and now it's DJ Moore. If he doesn't get it done now, Miami with Tua to a different degree, although his problems are a little bit different there, but they get him Tyreek. I guess what I'm saying is, I believe in Justin Fields. I made that clear on this show 2 weeks ago. But if he doesn't get it done this year, then there are no excuses, right? I mean, then it is the right thing for them to consider moving on.
They're going to have to, because this is a long-term rebuild that Ryan Poles has been given clearance to execute his way. They looked at the draft this year. They said, C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, any of the quarterbacks that we could take right now are not better than what we currently have in Justin Fields. Next year could breed a different story.
Okay. Going off script when things start to get weird is what made Russell Wilson a great player in Seattle, right? I mean, that is really what he is. So what great coaches do is they are like sculptors, right? They've got a lump of clay, and you mold it into whatever it is that you think it is best suited to be. So if he had Drew Brees, and Drew Brees had a particular skill set, his accuracy, his efficiency, all that kind of stuff, maybe Sean Payton designed an offense for that. Doesn't he need to put together an offense that at least on some level takes advantage of the things that Russell Wilson does well, which are not similar to the things that guy did well?
Greeny, you don't want the baseline of your offense being off-scripted plays, right? You got to have some kind of structure, and Sean Payton is going to be able to provide that for Russell Wilson. Now, I'm not expecting Russ to be Drew Brees, because they are two different type of quarterbacks. And there are things about Russell Wilson that Sean Payton is going to say, you know what, let me alter this or tweak this a little bit here and there. But the baseline of everything is going to be what Sean Payton wants to do. I don't think anybody on the Denver Broncos is in a situation to feel like, they want to alter anything with Sean Payton's coming in.
I get it. Mark Schlereth once said to me, we never go in the huddle and say, okay, broken play on 3, let's go. I understand. I understand that's not but you understand what I'm saying here? You don't get Russell Wilson and ask him to be something that he isn't.
And the idea of letting Russ cook needs to be flipped this time. It needs to be let Sean Payton cook in this offense, and he's going to put him in situations that, frankly, he wasn't utilized in last year. We saw poor pass protection and routes that were called for receivers that didn't tie him up correctly, which is why you saw a panicked, a rushed Russell Wilson going through his progressions, accuracy issues, footwork issues. That's the thing that I think within this offense, we talk about things that are predicated on rhythm and timing. Got to make sure the footwork lines up with all of that. So with Sean Payton taking over the reins here and finding ways to get Russell Wilson more opportunities off of play action, that's going to be the juice that gets this thing back going. Let's not forget, too, all of the running backs that Sean Payton had in New Orleans, whether it was Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram, Darren Sproles, that helps take pressure off a 34-year-old quarterback who, I'm with you. I think that you've got to pick your spots to utilize his legs, but you're also going to be utilizing those running backs to help.
They're going to be balanced, right? That's the history of Sean Payton and his offense. Utilizing those running backs and utilizing and getting to a play action, a situation to where your offense is now thriving. He's not going to just put the ball in Russell Wilson's hand and say, hey, take us to the promised land. Those running backs will be utilized in Denver.
I get it. But, Danny, hear me out. From the moment they got Sean Payton, it feels like the storyline has been, well, Russell Wilson better do what Sean Payton wants or Russell Wilson's going to be out of there. And I get it. That probably from 35,000 feet, that's probably right. But at the end of the day, great coaches have to adapt to the players they have. If he doesn't put Russell Wilson in a position to succeed, then in my view, Sean didn't do his job this year.
Agreed. And I certainly wasn't suggesting that he was just going to take what he did with Drew Brees and apply it to Russell Wilson. I think what you're talking about does happen and will happen. But that doesn't mean there's nothing on Russell Wilson here. He does have to fix his footwork so it times up with his receivers' routes.
The quarterback situation there is fascinating to me, Dan. What can you tell us?
Well, it's Brock Purdy's job if he's healthy, and so far so good on that. He looks good in practice. He said, He feels good in practice, and they're going to go with him as the starter week 1, assuming he can make it to the field, which coming off that elbow surgery, there was some question at some point this offseason, but those questions seem to have been largely alleviated. So it's between Trey Lance and Sam Darnold for the backup spot behind Brock Purdy.
But here's what I will say this. We talked about this earlier this week on the show, and I got a bunch of messages from people whose opinions I value telling me Trey Lance has looked great in their camp. That Trey Lance, that they see him. Not that he's going to beat out Purdy, but that Lance is a guy who was starting to be exactly what they hoped he could eventually become, which is why I say this is a fascinating situation, because you have a guy that you traded everything for to move up and take, then you got a guy who was the last pick in the draft. What are you hearing, Danny?
Trey Lance is not the first time he's looked good in training camp.
Right.
Like, he's a pretty good training camp player. The problem is Trey Lance has played very few football games in his life.
Right.
He didn't play very many in college, hasn't played very many in the NFL, and I think the 49ers underestimated how significant that was going to be when they moved up to draft him. He's got the talent, and I think, I don't want to start trading the whole division away, but this is somebody who could have appeal to a team that's looking for a young quarterback if the Niners decide to do it.
Think about next year, though. Not right now, because they're not going to get the return. People throw out Tampa Bay. Would they want to trade for Trey Lance right now? I don't think that San Francisco would get nearly what they gave up to go get a Trey Lance. But let's just play this out really quick. Minnesota. Do we know if Kirk Cousins is going to be the starter there beyond this season? No, we do not. But we do know that Trey Lance is under contract for a couple more years. That might be an easy way for this team with Justin Jefferson in the mix. They're going to give him the extension at some point soon to be able to not have a drop-off at the quarterback
Same
position.
offensive system as well, too.
Here's the thing about Lance. You make the point. He hasn't played a lot of football games. Well, there's only one way to remedy that, and that is for him to play football games. And if he's not going to do it in San Francisco this year, and if Purdy is healthy, everything we hear is that he's not, then you're looking at a guy who will have basically not played a game. He didn't play. The year of COVID, his team they played one game. They scheduled one game like as a showcase for him. So he played one game that year, and then he came to the NFL, and he's played hardly at all since then. So it'll be like 5 years since he's played a football game by next year.
How many teams have that luxury, though? But that goes to show you that the front office and hitting on other guys, it allows you.
Hit on the last pick in the draft.
People get fired for stuff like that.
Well, unless you're in Green Bay. Unless you're in Green Bay. It's the only other place where that's acceptable.
Again, it's Darnold, Lance, and Purdy, obviously not in that order, but keeping them all probably has some appeal. In Kyle Shanahan's 6 seasons as 49ers head coach, they have had a quarterback start more than 10 games in a season twice. They always use multiple quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Last year they used 3. That's how they found out Purdy could do it. So it may be that we get to see Trey Lance. I'm not wishing anything bad on Brock Purdy, but it may be.
By the way, did you see what Kyle said yesterday? And this wasn't prepared, but you just made me think of it. That if they had made the Super Bowl, they were going to call Phillip Rivers. That Phillip Rivers was going to come out of retirement and start the Super Bowl for the 49ers if they had gotten there because their quarterbacks were all hurt. Because we've been talking about the issue they have in Dallas, right? They got Zack Martin. He's not happy. He wants a little more money. They don't seem to be willing to give him that extra money. Courtney, is there a solution that you can think of for this problem?
Does it involve a call being placed down to Jerry World?
By?
Joe Douglas.
Who's that?
The general manager of the New York Jets.
Okay, keep talking.
So I would like to see the New York Jets upgrade their offensive line.
Yes, I'd like to see that too.
11 starters last year. Injuries were a big issue. And you just have a lot of concerns still up front. On the interior and at the tackle spots. Dwayne Brown's 100 years old.
Yes.
No disrespect, but he's getting up there. You know that Elijah Vera-Tucker is pretty much your own, Connor McGovern, your security on the interior. Why not upgrade the tackle spots? The names that are out there right now are not the sexiest. You're not going to when I say James Hurst, Lyle Collins, guys that might be on the trading block.
David Bakhtiari.
David Bakhtiari, maybe. But I think that you would like Zack Martin.
I would love Zack Martin.
New York
I
Jets.
wouldn't like Zack Martin. I would love Zack Martin.
You would love it. So I think that we can, if you want to go ahead, you can call Jerry Jones.
Do you have Jerry's number in there?
Dan, I'm sure Graz has it.
Do you have Jerry's number in there?
We could talk in the break.
Get Jerry on the phone and get this done. Look, there's a question on the screen. Do the Jets need to make a trade for an offensive offensive lineman, Dan?
There's 20 teams in the league that need to make a trade for an offensive lineman. It's easier said than done, especially for a team that just traded so much to get Aaron Rodgers. I don't know what the Jets have to offer the Cowboys, even if this was a real thing, which I don't know that it is.
See, they didn't actually, you keep saying that. They didn't trade that much. They flip-flopped first picks this past year, and then they traded a 2 that could potentially become a 1 next year. Yeah. You can get an offensive lineman for what they have left. You trade a 3 or something like that for Zack Martin, and you give him a few bucks, and you get out there.
I don't think the Cowboys want to trade Zack Martin. But anyway, yes, I think it would be good for the Jets to trade for an offensive lineman, if only for depth. Because, right, you're hoping for Mekhi Becton at left tackle, right? You're counting on something from Dwayne Brown, who's older. You know,
not depth. Not depth. So there's my list. Ron Rivera's at 5, Stefanski's at 4, Staley at 3, Robert Saleh at 2, and Mike McCarthy at 1. Danny, what do you think?
We don't have a picture of Stefanski without the mask on. I think that's a little rough.
It's an interesting choice, but okay.
Look, first of all, this is a very grim decision to go with it. I mean, preseason starting, there's so much hope.
Right.
Now we're firing 5 guys.
Well, they're on the hot seat.
A little bit much
Hopefully none of them get fired.
For early August. As is always the case, I think the Cowboys head coach is not in as much jeopardy as people want to believe he is. I wouldn't have put him number 1. But Greeny, in order to really make this list interesting and get people talking about it, which I know is what you want.
Right.
You got to sneak Belichick on there.
Oh, Lord.
You got to.
So this
almost failed.
Here's how this comes up. So when I did the 5 people with the most at stake this year, a few weeks ago, I did put Belichick on the list.
All right.
Here's my rationale on not having him on this list. I don't believe he gets fired. And I think that's what we typically mean when we say the hot seat. I could be wrong, but I would be shocked if Robert Kraft fired Bill Belichick. I do think, however, there is a lot at stake for him. Because if this season goes really sideways, I think there will be a lot of talk amongst the fans, amongst the media, and it'll be a lot of focus on, is he just there to break down Shula's record? So I agree. There's a lot riding on this for Bill, but I don't think it's a hot seat in the sense that I don't think he gets fired. Do you?
I don't think it's a freezing cold seat. Look, if it ever happens, if they decide, obviously it'll happen at some point, somebody else will coach the team. But when they get to the point where they decide Belichick shouldn't be the coach anymore, it will not be a firing. They'll send him out with all kinds of bells and whistles, as they should. But I think it's an important year for them. I really do.
I do. So maybe I'm parsing words. Maybe that's fair. What do you think, Cronin?
Well, I think we had heard some of the buzz around the combine that he was considering giving up some of the personnel decisions. Doesn't seem like that actually came to fruition, but that led me down the path of, does he see the end in sight? Does he see himself on a hotter seat that maybe, it's not on this list, but maybe on others? So I don't think it's completely out of the question. I don't think they fire him. I think that there would be this level of respect given to a Bill Belichick that he would be able to kind of go off gracefully.
Yeah, I understand that part of it.
But the question is whether that happens this year or not.
I would be willing to bet you, Harry Douglas, almost anything you wanted that he coaches there long enough to break Shula's record. Bear in mind, he is how many wins away? I should have had that with me. Someone's telling me in my ear when you look it up, 30 wins away from becoming the winningest coach in NFL history. That's probably 3 seasons. I'm telling you right now, I believe he coaches that long.
So we got him winning 10?
Maybe four. Yeah. I believe he coaches long enough to break that record. I do, and I think Bob Kraft lets him, unless it is a total disaster, which I don't expect. I think they're going to be a better team this year than most people think.
I don't think we're ever going to see Bill Belichick getting fired from the New England Patriots. It would be him walking away, but I'm more under the lights that, Bill Belichick, the general manager, probably needs to go away more so than the head coach.
I don't know. Somebody once told me a quote Robert Kraft likes to say, which is that there are 2 kinds of people in this world, owners and renters. Yeah. And you know which one Bob Kraft thinks himself to be. And I just think at some point, if they continue, you say unless it's a total disaster. Last year was something pretty close to a total disaster.
Last year
of Belichick's making.
Correct.
Right?
Last year, I think, was maybe Bill's worst year in New England when you consider that most of the problems stemmed from the coaching decisions he made. But I think he has solved that with Bill O'Brien. Look, like we said about the Steelers, I will say the same thing about the Patriots. Yep. You write them off at your own risk. This is my list, and I'm standing by it. Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.